Our guest says IPO activity in the US is heating up. We are joined by Christine Short, she is head of research at an outfit called Wall Street Horizon, which was just bought by TMX Group. Christine, I think I have that straight. So we think of you, of course, as a US analyst. That's your specialty, but you now work for our own domestic stock exchange company indirectly. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You've been doing some number crunching on US IPOs. What are the big things coming to the market as we run out 2025 and into 2026?
Yeah, well, as you know, and as your last guest said about Canadian markets, it's been not a great environment for companies to publicly debut in both 2023 and 2024. And we're all looking at 2025 as this is the year that public debuts are going to return. And indeed, it has recently started to pick up as recently as the spring. This week might actually be one of the biggest weeks in IPOs since 2021, which was a record. So we've got Klarna debuting today. They priced at $40 a share. They were expected to come in at 35 to 37. Part of that, better than expected share price is due to how some of the other names have performed thus far. Then tomorrow you've got Figure Technology. Later in the week on Friday, you've got a foursome of Legence, which is an HVAC company. You have Gemini, which is the Winklevoss brothers, crypto exchange, and then you have some other names like Via Transportation. So a loaded week. Next week, no different. You're going to see StubHub finally make their public debut, likely on Wednesday. So things are certainly picking up in Q3. We've still got 3 weeks left, obviously, but we're at about 100 IPO announcements in the US, and that would make it on target to be the heaviest IPO announcement quarters going back to Q1 2022.
And we've heard predictions that Goldman Sachs, among others, will be big winners here. IPO business tends to be very profitable.
It sure does, and that's why we've seen really every quarter over the last 2 years, the investment banks have been taking a hit on, both IPOs and M&A activity. Beginning this year, there were, comments within those big bank reports, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, that said the environment for public debuts is getting a little more favorable. We still have headwinds, of course, and we've had names that have stayed on the sidelines because of those headwinds, mainly tariff risk, persistently high interest rates, which we expect to come down next week. So the environment is getting better for IPOs, not to mention markets are at record highs, so that doesn't hurt either. And
I'm just looking, BlackRock Coffee Bar among the IPOs, and apparently their story began in 2008 in a tiny drive-through in Beaverton, Oregon, but they're in several states right now. They're big on delivery. Would you ever get coffee delivered?
Absolutely. I live in New York. Anything that's easy. I like to get everything delivered. Yeah, they're an interesting name. Also expected to debut on Friday as well. And then if you look at some of those other names, like I said, there's 4 other names. But sure. BlackRock Coffee, yeah, you said began in 2008. Some of these names have been waiting to debut for several years. The pre-IPO process usually takes about 2 years with due diligence, finding the right underwriters. And again, like I said, after that booming year in 2021, there were many names that were waiting in 2022 to go private. And because of interest rates, the higher cost of borrowing, they did decide to sit it out. But it's finally, again, like I said, a lot of that also was because the names that did IPO in 2023, 2024 didn't have great debuts, right? Their stocks plummeted. There was a roller coaster in how those IPOs performed. Now, if you look at the likes of Circle Internet, Figma, Bullish, the crypto exchange that debuted in July, some of these names are up triple digits and far higher than where they priced at. And so that certainly encourages other names that have been a little more leery of debuting to come out as well.
And then I think you mentioned Netskope, the cybersecurity firm, and we haven't seen apparently that many IPOs for cybersecurity players yet, but that's a growing industry.
Yeah, that's true. I think there may have been one other this year, but they're expected to debut on Thursday. A bulk of these, if you look across the board, as you mentioned in the intro, it's AI names and it's crypto-based names, because that's where we've sort of seen the fervor in the US. But cybersecurity is still a booming and interest industry. Look at the names of Palantir, those cyber and sort of defensive AI names are also doing very well. So like you said, Netskope likely to debut on Thursday of next week.
It is interesting. I mean, we hear so much about private investing, private equity attracting more interest anyway. And that's an alternative for a company staying in the private world using VC capital, for example. But I guess the IPO does bring you visibility, for one thing.
Right, it brings you credibility, transparency. Sure, private funding has increased over the last 10 years. So it's made it possible for some of these unicorn companies to just continue to receive private income. The inflows, or private equity, the income or the inflows have been, very surpassing what we've seen over the last decade. If you look at OpenAI, you look at SpaceX, they've remained private. But there are, of course, benefits of going public. You have all these new shareholders, you have access to more capital to do things like M&A, R&D, just generally increase CapEx, pay off loans. It's a liquidity event for early investors and founders. So there's a lot of reasons, but you have to make sure you can keep up with the rigor of the SEC. Will you be able to do the due diligence and the reporting on time? So not every company is ready for it, but certainly there are those benefits once a company does go public. And
StubHub, you may have mentioned this, the ticket reselling platform going public. It's interesting. At one stage, it was owned by eBay, but then they subsequently sold it. It's great to hear you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Christine.
Thanks so much for having me.
Christine Short is head of research at Wall Street Profiles, and which is a unit now of TMX Group.